That means when it comes to loving your husband, respecting your husband, the deepest root of real Christian womanhood is found right here. It's not slave talk. Slaves obey out of fear. You know where there's love? It casts out fear. The submission Peter's talking about is for the free woman. Look at 1 Peter 3:5. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves by submitting to their own husbands. You see that? There's the answer. They hoped in God. You remember what it said of Christ? Christ was able to submit himself and refuse to sin even when he was punished, even when he suffered. It says he committed himself to his Father. My sisters, this is exactly it. Do you see that? Holy women hoped in God. This is the free woman. She does not put her hope in her husband. The free woman does not put her hope in getting a husband, single young ladies or older ladies that don't have a husband. She doesn't put her trust in her beauty. She doesn't put her trust in her successes in her career. Her trust is in the Lord. It is the foundation for Christian womanhood, for submitting to her husbands. Her hope is in God. She hopes in him. The free woman, the Christian woman, looks, you know what? A free woman whose trust is there, she realizes, you know what? My time on this earth is short. I've been told that I'm only going to get to the kingdom through much tribulation. And I have an inheritance that is undefiled, and it is waiting for me. I have this hope in God. He is with me. He is for me. He's not going to leave me. I'll tell you what, that puts confidence in a woman. She can look away from the trials, the difficulties, the troubles, the miseries, the obstacles of life, even the ones caused by her husbands. Look, a woman in this world, she comes along, she ends up with a bad husband, and it's like, you end up being one of these Muslim women who has a husband that beats her, makes her believe she's going to hell because she's a woman, not just because she's Muslim and denying Christ, but because she's a woman. He's demeaning to her. She's nothing more than a slave. You know what? She can look at life, and she can look at all the obstacles and all the miseries and all that, and she can look at it, and she can be dejected. She ought to be. But I'll tell you, for you Christian ladies, you free ladies, see, that woman is a woman in bondage. You're a free lady. You're a child of the King, and your time is very short in that situation. Look, we're all called to gain that kingdom through tribulation. Yours may be your husband. Guaranteed, the sisters that have saved husbands, they've got to go through their fiery trials too. They may just be different. Although even women with saved husbands have enough trials with those saved husbands oftentimes. But, brethren, I'll tell you, maybe you didn't notice this. When we were going through the Proverbs 31 woman last week, did you notice that there was a verse, I think it was about verse 26. It says, she laughs at the time to come. Did you notice that? Let me ask you this. How can a woman just laugh at the time to come? You know what that speaks of? Boldness, confidence. A woman laughing at the future. How can a woman laugh at the future? How does she know her husband won't die tomorrow? Because her hope's not set on her husband. One of her children die. Well, it's obviously a grief to her, but that's not where her hope is. A woman can laugh at tomorrow because her hope is built on something that is exactly the same tomorrow. On an unmovable, unfailing God. I mean, you come to this book of 1 Peter, you get this kind of thing, a living hope. My sisters, this letter starts with this. He has caused you to be born again to a living hope. You may have a mean and cruel husband, but you have a living hope. A living hope. an inheritance, imperishable, undefiled, unfading. You read again, 1 Peter 1:13, set your hope fully on the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. No matter how bad it is today, ladies, you have a hope on something that is so great, so glorious. You know, right after this section here in 1 Peter 3, it says, the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. His ears are open to their prayer. You have this confidence, no matter how hard your situation is. The eyes of the Lord are upon you. He has not forsaken you. That's what Christ did. He entrusted himself. Did you notice that? He entrusted himself to him who judges justly. That's what Jesus did when he suffered. Ladies, entrust yourself to the Lord. That is where your living hope is. You've been born again to that. My sisters, you're just like that Proverbs 31 woman. Have strength, dignity in her clothing. Laugh at the time to come. Entrust yourself to the Lord. You're able to do that. Just shortly after this section 2, it says, who is there to harm you? 1 Peter 3:13. Who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. That's free woman talk right there. Free woman talk. She laughs at tomorrow. Was your husband mean to you yesterday? Yeah, but you can still laugh at tomorrow. Your hope is in God. You don't have to fear, just like those holy women of old who put their hope right there. You have hope in a God who his eyes are on you. They're on the righteous. He knows your situation. Look, every one of us have predetermined sufferings. God will never let you suffer more than what is good for the refining of your faith. Your husband's strength is in his hand. God can hold him. God can stay him. That's where the confidence comes. That's how you can live without fear. You can know, my husband cannot speak to me. He cannot treat me. He cannot do a thing except God give him permission. You're going into that household not where that man is in control, but where God is in control. And I just want to end with this. Look, ladies, there is a way submission speaks. There's a way submission acts. And I thought it would be a good thing to end this by just touching these three final concluding things. There is a way submission says yes. There's a way submission says that's stupid. There's a way submission says no. I mean, you know what I mean by that? There's a way that a woman actually does obey her husband when it's a good thing to obey. There's the way a wife submits when what her husband is doing is really stupid. It's not just sin. You know, husbands ever have a knack of doing some stupid things in life? And there's a way for submission to deal with stupidity. And by the way, just because you're a Christian doesn't alleviate you from all stupidity. And then there's a way for a woman, there's a way that submission speaks when it has to say to a husband, I've got to obey God, not you. So how is that? I mean, the first one, how does submission say yes? I mean, I think about these ladies. They, lion-hearted ladies, fearless, free for the Lord's sake, hoping in God. And they come along, and maybe God's given them a good husband, or even if it's a husband that doesn't obey the word, it's just something that the woman can just fully and freely comply to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a test. I mean, how does that submission speak? It speaks sort of this way. That, look, this is the way submission speaks. I delight to have you lead. And ladies, you that have lost husbands, you can speak the same way. You can come to your husbands and you can say, I love it when you are not just some couch potato passive, limp-wristed husband. Of course, submission probably doesn't say it just like that. Gentle, quiet. I mean, that imperishably beautiful spirit would come along and say, I love when you lead. I love when you're not passive. I love when you take the bull by the horns in this family. I love to follow you. It doesn't, you know, there's a way women, even lost women out here in this world, can submit to a husband, but it's more like, well, I'm giving in this time. It's more like the bartering thing, you know. I'm going to give you your way this time, but next time I'm doing this because I'm positioning myself, because next time I want my way. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a woman who she's rejoicing, and she lets her husband know it. Husband, I rejoice when you lead. And it's hard on this family when you don't lead. That's the way submission should talk. Now, how about this? Husband wants to do stupid. And the wife looks and says, that's really stupid. But she doesn't, now look, submission doesn't come up to him and say, well, that's really stupid. Submission doesn't talk that way. Submission doesn't call him stupid. That's not respectful. That's not full of reverence. Basically, in that kind of case, submission speaks. Well, let me just say this. Men, you should want the counsel of your wives. You hear the thing that was said in Proverbs 31 about the woman, this excellent wife? She opens her mouth with wisdom. You know what? Women have wisdom. Very often, women marry husbands who actually have lower IQs. It's not, look, a woman may be subject. She may be inferior with strength the majority of the times, but I'll tell you this, in my experience, wisdom don't come behind men in their ability to understand Scripture, in their ability to comprehend what is wise and what is foolish. Now, it may be that the headship of men is very critical, and for her defense and for her protection, it's necessary. There may be aspects of discernment, like Eve kind of, it was pretty undiscerning what she did out there in the garden. And there may be places for that headship, male headship, to come along and be a protective there. But I have found that ladies have tremendous amounts of vast biblical wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And men, if you're going to be wise and you get married, to reject the counsel of your wife is absolutely foolish. In fact, the Proverbs have a lot to say about counsel. And why a man would not seek counsel in his own wife, who knows him the best and often knows the circumstances very thoroughly, is beyond me. But wives, I can tell you this, being of a quiet spirit does not mean that you cannot give counsel and share counsel to a husband. And there is a way submission speaks. There is a way to come to your husband when you think he's doing something really stupid and say, dear, I want to talk to you about this. I really appreciate that you take the lead. I appreciate that you're not being passive. But I have some concerns here, and I want to share them with you. And that's a good place. And you know what submission does? If husband says, I've heard you, and I'm still going this way. I'll tell you this. I can imagine my own wife at certain times have thought I was doing something really stupid. She gave me her counsel, and I pressed through anyways. I heard her counsel. Sometimes the wife may think, well, you're ignoring my counsel. No, wives, just because they do something different doesn't mean, don't lay that in their face. Don't throw that in their teeth. Submission doesn't do that. Submission says, I've spoken the wisdom that I feel God has given me. Now, just like Christ, You commit the thing to the Lord. Your hope is in Him. Your hope is not in your husband's ability. Your hope is in God who gives wisdom. Your hope is in God who rules providence, who rules the world. You've done what you can. Now submission says, okay, you know, I don't think that this is the right thing, but I'm following you. For the Lord's sake, I'm following you in this. I'm going to honor you. I'm going to honor the Lord in this. And you follow. And you leave the result to the Lord. And then there is a way, ladies, to say no. Look, Ephesians 5:23 says, ladies, you are to obey your husbands in everything. I don't find typically that the ladies' problems, the biggest problem is drawing the line at sin. Typically, ladies draw the line somewhere else. The line is sin. You're to submit in everything save sin, even if you must suffer for not following your husband into sin. Just like Christ, without sin, He suffered. Ladies, there is a way submission says no. Sometimes it's suffering. You may have to suffer the consequences, the reviling, the hostility. You may need to. And there's a way. Again, you don't throw it in the face. You don't come across, submission does not come across in a way that provokes the husband. It's saying, honey, I love to follow you. I am determined for God's sake to follow you. I want to be able to follow you. But I can't follow you into sin. Because I wouldn't be honoring the Lord then. And I need to honor Him. And I can't go where you want me to go. And that's very submissive. And I'll tell you what, Peter says, you live that way in front of your husband. Your husband may very well be one to the Lord. And you know, there's a place to say to your husband, the Lord tells me to be subject to you in everything, but not sin. And I can't go there. It tells me that I must obey God rather than men. In certain circumstances, submission must say no to the husband. But again, let it be in that imperishable beauty. Imperishable. Don't you see? Do you know what imperishable means? God, through all of this, is designing a beauty into you that will never fade. It will be there forever. That humility, that quietness, that gentleness that He is working into the very fabric of your Christian being will never end. It's imperishable. It's forever. It's for good. Imperishable beauty. Ladies, this is the standard. Okay, sister, we will take a few moments and absorb that.